Morning. It's almost 25 minutes before 9. Welcome to the last forum of this fiscal year. Thank you very much for everybody who's online. Lots of people are there, more than 70 people online, and enough number of people here in the room, I guess, too. Thank you again for showing up. We would go through some quick updates, and then it's time for you to ask questions, and hopefully we answer. So with that, can we start with the animal care and use presentation? Donna, you are the first one. Should we say that?
Thanks, Ahmad. Hi, everybody. My name is Donna Routley. I am the Mayock Director, Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee Director. And there we go. So I want to take a couple minutes just to update everybody this morning about some key personnel changes and a very, very brief update about ALAC and important dates to be aware of. And this will pertain obviously to people who have animal care and use research projects. So I think everybody is aware that Lori Brignolo is the campus attending veterinarian. And last fall, there was a new position that she went into. So she's technically the executive director and the campus attending veterinarian. So if you want to think of her as being the overall person in charge, the overall umbrella of the animal care program. And then within that, well, I just want to mention Angelina is Lori's executive assistant, and they both have offices out here now, which is new. 6 months ago, that didn't exist. So you can find Lori out here at Research Park. You can also find her at her office on TRAC's headquarters on Old Davis Road. And then CVS staffing, Campus Veterinary Services. There's been a few changes there that people may or may not be aware of, depending on which veterinarians you typically interact with. We have a new to Campus Veterinary Services veterinarian, Dr. Casey Woodward. Some of you may know her from when she worked at the Primate Center, but she is now associated with Campus Veterinary Services. We have Dr. Andy Moffett and Chris Galang, our residents. So there will be a new resident beginning in July. I don't have a name to provide you yet there. And then you probably do know Dr. Betty Ma, Dr. Rhonda Oates, who is the interim associate director, now that Lori has moved into the executive director position, and Dr. Jacob Thiel, who is fairly new into the office as well. So these are just names to be aware of. As they've got new staff, they may be reassigning some of the locations of which areas they're responsible for. And then within the IACUC office, we also have finally, over the last year, finalized some staffing. We've had a couple of vacant positions that have, we've now just filled the last one. So I want to bring to your attention the very bottom person, Nicole McCowan. Nicole used to be with Campus Veterinary Services, and she is now, as of June 1st, 100% with IACUC office. So you may have interacted with her, but in a different capacity previously. And then, of course, I think the rest of us, you probably have interacted with us in some degree, whether it's protocols or animal tracking system or inspections. And then the other thing I want to bring to everybody's attention is really important date, ALAC. ALAC is coming up on, let's see, September 30th to October 4th. It's a week long that they'll be here. This is extremely important to our campus. And there's a misnomer. People often think that ALAC is an inspection. So I just want to clarify that it's actually a site visit. We ask them to come. This is a voluntary accreditation. Having said that, though, Office of President has said that all campuses will be ALAC accredited. So it's, while it's voluntary, it's not really. But it's a little different. They can't fine us like USDA can or anything like that, but it's incredibly important. Having ALAC accreditation is a gold standard. We want that. And, it shows, as I have in red here, that we're demonstrating that we go beyond the minimum standards. we are top-notch gold standard. We achieve excellence in everything we do as far as the animal care program. They send 8 people to Davis. They're here for a week. They look at every aspect of our program. It's very intense. And this occurs every 3 years. So, while it's a little bit nerve-wracking, and it might feel nerve-wracking if they walk into your lab and start asking you questions, this is really an opportunity. And I want to stress that this is an opportunity to really show off your program, show off your research, talk to them. We don't want people to leave town the week of ALAC. We really encourage PIs to be available, lab staff to be available, talk about your research if they come in. We will be finalizing a schedule fairly soon. It's a quite detailed, comprehensive schedule. We'll send it out to people. It is very carefully done to make sure that we can get everything in during the week and not have biosecurity issues from going from one facility to another. They will not visit every single lab, but they will visit a good number. And we may not know that until the week of ALAC. So again, I'm asking for involvement and use it as an opportunity to brag about your program, brag about your research. I just have a couple pictures up here. This is Dr. Betty Ma, and she's obviously holding a couple of newborn sheep there. And then we've got on the right-hand side, there's a rabbit going into a CT scan, an owl under anesthesia, a few other various pictures. And last but not least, contact information. The first website up there is the Office of Research General Campus Animal Care Program homepage you can go to. Then you can get to specific pages for Campus Veterinary Services off that, and for the IACUC office off that. One last thing regarding ALAC, this is something new. ALAC is now starting to look at cephalopods, and cephalopods are things like octopus and cuttlefish and squid. We've never included them in our animal care program prior to this. We currently actually technically don't have them included. They're not under any of the regulatory agencies. They're not something that has been included. However, ALAC now is looking at that. And so I'm asking if anybody's out there listening and you happen to have research that involves cephalopods, please let Lori or I know. It's really important that we are aware of that so that we can at least discuss with ALAC what type of research involving cephalopods is on campus. We know we have a little bit of bodega bay, but we're trying to reach out to everybody and get the word out in case somebody has something in their lab that they've never needed to notify us about previously. With that, if anybody has any questions, I'll be around. Please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Let's see. We have a couple of presentations from accounting, and I'll wait for Mike to come in. How about if we go to proposals? Kelly? Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Because we know that staff turnover is inevitable, we wanted to take this opportunity to remind everybody exactly what the team does so that there's no confusion out there what level of service they can expect from the proposals team. So proposals is primarily responsible for reviewing and authorizing submission of proposals for the campus community. This means that we're reviewing for financial and regulatory compliance, not just with university policies, but also with sponsor policies. And we're reviewing terms and conditions that must be accepted at the proposal stage, which will help at the award stage if an award is issued. To ensure that we're able to complete a thorough review, we ask that you provide us with at least 5 business days to complete that review. Anything less than that may be a limited review, which means we look at the indirect cost and anything else we may have time to review. If it comes in the day that it's due, or sometimes even the afternoon before it's due, we may not have an opportunity to review anything at all, which is really detrimental for the proposals process. So again, 5 business days, be sure to account for that when you're doing your routing. Some people think, well, it's 5 days, I'm routing it. That doesn't mean it reaches us. Sometimes it takes several days to go through the routing process. So please keep that in mind when you're creating the proposal submission in Cayuse. We want to reaffirm that it's the PI's responsibility to look for spelling and grammar, page numbers, margins, font, the content of the bio sketches and the abstracts. We're not reviewing those to ensure that they're really complying with the guidelines. So again, PI and departmental responsibility for that as well. And then when you are submitting something and you have questions about a proposal that maybe hasn't quite routed to us, or you're developing the proposal, please email us at proposals@ucdavis.edu. We will reach back out to you oftentimes within an hour or two. We're really quick about responding to that. If it's been assigned to an analyst, please reach out to your assigned analyst first. And then of course, if you have questions about Cayuse or issues you're encountering with Cayuse, please email orcayusehelp@ucdavis.edu so that they can resolve any issues you may have with routing or proposal development before it reaches us. And then the other thing I want to remind everybody of is Form 800s are due before the proposal is submitted. They need to be completed into our office by the time of submission. We've been having some issues with getting those completed in a timely manner. It's actually a sponsor requirement that those are due at that time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just wait, maybe there will be questions. I don't know. Regarding the Form 800, that's the conflict of interest, the federal conflict of interest. And as Kelly said, that's federal government's requirement, that we have to have the form in place when the proposal is submitted. It's nothing that we can collect later. We have to have it, as a part of compliance, we have to have it at the time that we are sending the proposal out. Are you having a question?
So the one question that has come in online is, does SPO review the RFA for the required sections of the proposal as well, such as to see if the data management piece is included if it's required?
So we are reviewing the calls that are issued to make sure that the required pieces are present. So you don't need to worry about that. The analyst will be looking at that to make sure that all of the required submittals are in fact present. Any other questions?
Nothing more? Thank you. And again, remember that if there is time, all of those reviews will be done. If the proposal comes in a couple of hours before the deadline, none of that might be done. So that's where we need help from all of you. Okay, so with the proposal update here, how about awards? Grace? Thank you, Grace.
All right, good morning. This is Grace Slew, Associate Director of the Awards team here at Sponsor Programs. So to follow up on what Kelly said about the proposals piece, the awards team takes over once we actually get an award here in Sponsored Programs. So even if you don't submit a proposal to the sponsor per se, once we get an award, the awards team will look at the whole package. So if you don't have a complete proposals review, it might mean that the award review takes longer because we have to make sure the budget is correct. We have to make sure that all of your compliance is in place. So if you don't submit you need to submit a Form 800 at the time of proposal, but the awards team will certainly make sure all the compliance items are in place. All the IACUC and IRB protocol numbers required for the project are in place. And we're asking you right now to sign the protocol certification form to certify that those are the congruent protocols for your project. We're also making sure for all of your NIH awards or all of the agencies and foundations that rely on the PHS rules, that you have that PHS COI in place, okay, conflict of interest, that's due once a year. And you also need your PHS training that's due once every 4 years. So if you know that your PI has not completed their COI once a year, you might ask them to do it right now. That way we don't have to ask them and hold up the award while they do that. Okay, so that's the PHS conflict of interest. If you have a foundation, we will ask for you to fill out that 700U online. Don't jump the gun and do that at the time of proposal because that should be submitted 30 days at the within 30 days of signing the award. So if you jump the gun and do that at the time of proposal, we'll ask you to do it again at the award stage. Let's see. And just to make sure everybody is aware, once we sign the award on behalf of the regents everything that happens after that award, the post-award actions, should also come through SPO. So if there are personnel changes on your award, if there are rebudgeting or carry forward requests, please ask us to send that request on to the sponsor, because we are supposed to be negotiating on behalf of your PI, on behalf of the regents. Okay, so don't just send that directly to the sponsor. Send that to us to send to the sponsor. And then we will let you know when those prior approval requests have been granted or declined, or if we have an amendment making that formal change to the award team takes care of those issues. Okay, so are there any questions about what the award team does? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Grace mentioned Form 700, 800, and all of that. And if there are new people that they might not know what's the difference, remember that Form 800 is a federal, basically, requirement for conflict of interest. And as Kelly said, per federal regulations, we have to have the conflict of interest forms and whatever is required there at the time of proposal. That's the regulation. The Form 700, 700U that Grace mentioned, that applies to awards received from non-governmental entities. And the reason that Grace talked about timing of filing that form has to do with the fact that the questions on the form ask the questions in the form of, in the last 12 months, and then a question. Like, in the last 12 months, did you receive any consulting fee from this entity? In the last 12 months, did you get any gift from them? And so on and so forth. So it's all last 12 months. So we have to start the clock from the time that we are accepting the award. So if you give it to us 6 months earlier, that's not good. We have to have it at the time of award, and we have kept some flexibility. Technically, again, the state law says, as I told you, that asked it about the last 12 months, but for all practical purposes, we have said that if the form is roughly 30 days old, that's good enough. Any updates? Anything from compliance on that issue? Just one second. Maybe you want to come up here. Jessica is from compliance is here, and
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jessica Trask. I'm from Research, Compliance, and Integrity. As a lot of you know, we are the Office of Record for the 700U, and we also perform reviews of your Form 800s and your PHS disclosures, which are the ones that you submit for NIH. A couple of just additional comments, because you guys have it's a complicated area, but you guys have laid it out really nicely. A reminder for NIH investigators, you're right that the NIH, the PHS disclosure needs to be filed annually. However, if you have a new significant financial interest, and that is any financial interest related to your institutional responsibilities, you need to update your disclosure within 30 days of getting that new interest. So for example, if you start doing new consulting that's related to your institutional responsibilities, if you have a startup company that is related to the work that you do at UC Davis, you have 30 days to add that to your disclosure. There was a question about what needs to be filed for state awards. So things from the state of California may or may not trigger disclosure requirements. We tend to do those sort of on a one-by-one basis. However, for awards from CIRM, that's the Stem Cell Institute, and awards from the UCOP Special Projects, those are also filed on a Form 800. I also want to remind everybody that even if your study is privately funded and would then trigger the 700U requirement, if it involves human subjects, you also have to file a Form 800 that is then signed by all of your co-investigators. So hopefully that clarifies, but thank you. If you have any questions, just type them in and we'll address those on a case-by-case basis.
thank you very much. Okay. let's see, we have two more presentations from both from accounting, Mike and James. Which one wants to go first? I think Mike is coming up. Hello, Mike. Hello. So how's indirect cost going? They would ask you, so I have to ask you first.
Oh. So I was going to update what's happening with the CBR rates and our transition to UC Path and our 2-month gap between fiscal year, the next fiscal year, and we'll still be on PPS for 2 months, and then we'll be moving for UC Path. So this is a little bit updated. I gave almost the exact same presentation to the assistant dean's meeting on last Friday, but I added a little bit more information based on some feedback, and then also just throwing some A&R stuff, but since A&R wasn't there at that meeting, so just to make sure everyone was knew about it. So what do we know? We don't know everything yet on UC Path, but our CBR proposal was submitted by UCOP. So as we move to UC Path, UCOP is putting together all 10 campuses CBR proposals. Communications have been started. I actually was on the phone with UCOP yesterday, clarifying some questions that CAS, the Cognizant agency, had on some questions on our proposals. So they are looking at it. So hopefully we will have at least an email confirmation there in place by July, like what you normally get, and usually get the rate agreement sometime in August, which was our history over the last few years. So what are we going to do right now? We're going to change. So we're going to go with the UC Path proposed rates, and we're going to change the KFS methodology to align as close to the UC Path methodology for this first 2 months. And so it would be the same, as close to the same methodology for the whole fiscal year. We won't be changing the VLA methodology in PPS. That just got too hard of programming to do for basically 2 payroll runs. We have announced, or the campus has announced, a mitigation plan associated with the postdocs, as that became a hot topic. So what's going to happen is the full 25.9% rate, or 25.9, will be charged, and then there will be a monthly rebate, kind of like the GSR buy down that happens now. So on the monthly close, we're going to credit back the differences for the first 2 years that was announced in the letter from Sarah. So I met with the programmers sometime this week, whatever day it was, and we were already started going through the process and how we're going to fit it through the ledgers and do it on the monthly close process on our GL scrubbers. So that will be going forward. So just a summary of the composite benefit rates that were submitted to the federal government for the campus. Being one of the ones that became the big issue was postdocs. We had them kind of commingled with faculty summer salaries. So UC Path's making us split those apart. So faculty summer salaries dropped from 17 to 10, postdocs went from 17 to 25, hence the mitigation plan that we put in place for the existing postdocs. And then summarize of the A&R benefit rates that were submitted to the government. And these are all moving along. And then this is kind of, we'll get this up on my website, hopefully today or tomorrow. But this is kind of a summary of key changes. So what's going to happen in our current state, what's happened all of 18 and 19. Then July and August, because September payroll gets paid in UC Path on October 1st. So we have really 2 months of monthly, and there's, I think, 2 biweeklies in July, 2 in August, and 1 in September before we go to UC Path. So there would be 5 biweeklies, 2 monthlies in our bridged version, and then everything will be in UC Path. So payroll, the wages are no change. But obviously, once we go to UC Path, there's going to be new earn codes. Your vacation pay becomes a PAIN DOS code. So it'll still be SB1, SB01, or sub A, sub G, but it will say VAC or VCN, a vacation line, and those will not actually be assessed CBR rates. So in KFS, we've been doing it. We've updated KFS to approximate UC Path methodologies. And then, so we'll only be assessing, the assessment will hopefully only just be on the regular earning types to mirror the UC Path ones for those first 2 months. The leave accrual salary, currently we have 10 different rates depending on the leave accrual code and how much the people leave. They generate, so there's no change for those first months. UC Path, there's only 2 leave accrual rates, one for accruing faculty and one for everyone else that accrues. And so that's a big change going forward. And that's based into Path. There was no, all we could do is set rates. We couldn't change that programming. Leave accrual benefits. Currently we have an assessment for accrual for salary, and then we accrue also for the benefits. We're turning that off because that will not be in Path. So the 8551 object code that people see when they accrue for benefits will be shut off effective the next pay compute in a couple weeks. Whatever the first one is in July. And so in Path, there will be no VLA benefit accrual. The leave usage for salary is still going to be the same for those first 2 months. So you get the full reg and you get credit back on for the actual VAC time based on the hourly rates. And it's really kind of similar in Path. The math is similar. It just looks completely different. So, and then leave usage of benefits. Was that not change? Leave usage benefits. So it was KFS. That's actually wrong. No change. Oh, actually, you get a credit back when you're on vacation for benefits, the 8932. So when we have the credit for salary and benefits. And that is still going to stay the same for right now because we can't change the leave to a pay and earn code. We can't reduce your reg and change it to VAC like Path's going to do. So you get assess the full CBR on your reg, and then we'll credit you back the VAC time for those 2 month period, which will mirror Path of only assessing like the time that you're on regular pay and not when you're on vacation pay. So that's no change in how it posts now, but because we're not assessing, so you get a credit back without an assessment for these months, so it mirrors the pathway. CBR add-on, so that was historically built into our CBR rates. We have additional assessments that came in 2014-ish or something like that. So because of the market, you see OP borrowed money against STIP to fund the pension program to buy down the unfunded obligation, which kept the rates lower for everyone. But now we have to pay that back. So every campus gets an assessment for principal and interest. Like a year and a half ago, when OP was doing these negotiations with the government, they really looked into this assessment and said, well, you're doing internal interest. You're paying yourself back internal interest, which is unallowable. You have to have arm's length transactions. You cannot pay yourselves in our internal interest. So they're making everyone break that apart. So it's always been held. We held it kind of centrally, and it was built into the rates, and we had to make an adjustment when we did the reconciliation for the government. But since the UC Path rates have that pulled out, there will be a new assessment that comes in UC Path, and we're trying to figure out if we could get these, what we're gonna do with it for the first 2 months right now, but somehow be some sort of manual adjustment at some point in time. We're getting through those right now. The CBR add-on, the Prop 2, which is I think only non-general funded. So that was an assessment that goes against, they're not contracts and grants, I believe, are not part of that, but that is not in UC Path. That's an additional assessment that was a budget deal 3 or 4 years ago, but that's run the budget office, and we run that through the KFS, and that will not change. That's not going to UC Path at all. And then Gale will change as well. So we do a monthly processing quality to assess it at the month closed. That's not going to change for those first 2 months. In UC Path, a Gale is going to be assessed automatically. We're also changing from the 3 object codes down to 1 object code for campus, and are staying with the 3 different object codes. So just be a consolidated 1 charge instead of 3 different charges. But they will be assessed in every time pay comes, and if you do a salary expense transfer in Path, those will move automatically and right away as well. The issue we're coming up with is how do you move it if they have a fund source that's unallowable or won't pay for it, we have to move it in the path world. So that's a different document in the past. So it's not as easy as doing the GEC that we do right now. So we're still working through that for a couple months down the road. And that's kind of the summary of all the major changes. And we'll be having this up on the website just for references to people and keep adding more information. A couple things we don't know yet. So VLA changes. There's been, as more campuses have gotten on to UC Path, they've found out some of the VLA logic that was kind of added at the end of UC Path isn't quite as accurate as it should be. So people are part-time employees that don't actually accrue it, but their title rolls up to the group that would accrue it, but they're not working over 50% time. It's still assessing. So they're going back and opening up some JIRAs or some change orders in the UC Path to look at what's happening with the VLA on some certain areas. And we don't know if that will be implemented by the time we go live or not, or it's coming down the pike. And then also employees that only accrue sick. So they have a leave code of F, so people only accrue sick. So they're coming up with a way to identify those people and make it sure that they're not being charged vacation. So there's a couple things that are going into UC Path that we don't know if or when it will be implemented by October 1st or September, December, as things get pushed through Path. There's also a business decision made at UC Path that there's some issues around people are split funded. So if you're crossing business units, school of medicine employee goes and charges a hospital account, or hospital account comes over and charges them a grant on school of medicine. The home HR business unit drives all the assessments. So it would be on the hospital rates would be charged to the school of medicine side. The hospital new OSHPOD object codes would be charged to school of medicine. Same thing would be with crossing A&R. So someone from A&R charges grant on chart 3, chart L rates would follow them over to 3. So it's kind of going back and forth. So this was identified as a major issue, especially once UCLA went live with the medical center and back and forth across the medical center. So there's a work group trying to figure this out right now for UC Path, but I guarantee this one will not be live before we go, or fixed before we go live. But this is something we're gonna have to look at manually and monitor as we go into UC Path, especially people that cross what they call business units from campus to hospital or campus to A&R. So those are the 3 main business units. And then also just the change in assessments. We have VLA and CBRs are only on time when you're not on vacation, and a few other earn codes are excluded, which is a different kind of projection than we've ever had to do before. You usually do the gross salaries and have escalations, but you have to now take gross salaries escalations minus what you expect vacation globally to come up with actual rates. So the variables seem like they could be a little bit different, and impacts on a different account to account could be different based on the amount of time people take vacation or don't take vacation. So it took some of the predictability of a CBR rate and made it more complex the way they did it there. So those are a couple of things we still don't know. And then I'm open for questions. Okay.
Maybe you can just repeat the question, but how will salary extension?
How will salary expense transfers? So the SCT document will be available for some amount of time to move old salary that was already posted. At some point in time, we're gonna have to shut that off because it's just, we have too many systems looking at too many different things, and then we'd have to go to a JV to move old salary with some documentation and detail. Salary expense transfers of any salary that's posted in the path will be going through the direct retro process in UC Path. No, it's fine. We'll be going through the UC Path, and then it's called a direct retro. It's a lot more clunky than the SCT document that we currently use. So getting things correct would be beneficial. Yeah, so the more jobs people have, more different earn codes, salary cap issues, they get really more complicated in this direct retro document that UC Path comes with. So getting that funding entry up to date is key. Anything else?
Oh, Thank you very much.
Oh.
Mike shared a lot of information, and I understand they would know the information would be on the website. And as he was talking, I was thinking that I am grateful that there is no test at the end of this presentation, because I have no idea what he talked about. So we'll see it on the website soon, hopefully, and we would understand, and little by little, we would learn everything about these things. James. End of the fiscal year.
It is, yes. Good morning, everybody. I've got just a little bit. One thing I just want to share is we brought a couple of new fund management analysts on board in the last few weeks, so we're almost fully staffed. One position is still under recruitment, but is it working? Should I start over? My opening, all I just commented on originally was that we have a couple of new fund analysts that we've brought on board in the last month or so. So we're pretty much staffed at this point. One position that we're still working on, hope to have something, before too long. But I also wanted to share some information we posted on our website having to do with foreign currency awards that have foreign currency impacts. Two different cases. One, well, this is really posted because there was an audit a little while ago, and one of the things was related to the way some concerns having to do with foreign currency transactions and the conversion that was being calculated and reported. But I broke it into two things. One is where we have awards that are actually written in a foreign currency. So when those happen, I won't go through the whole website, but it's here. Keep in mind that if you have an award that's written in, I don't know, Canadian dollars, it will depend on the currency translation rates as the award progresses and we receive payments. The actual US dollars that we have, every time that we get a payment in, we will go in and adjust your budget up or down based on the most recent information where we are. So just be aware of that. The other consideration is when we have projects that are that have a component that's conducted in a foreign country, and therefore there are expenses that are being transacted in the foreign currency, that it's important that the documentation be in place, that all of the it's really the documentation, making sure that you have a good record of the translations that are being done, that you're maintaining that information, and that you don't have just that documentation maintained in the foreign locations. The documentation should also be maintained here locally in the campus department, so that it's readily accessible and you have better control on it, rather than something that's, sitting in Afghanistan somewhere and might be hard to retrieve on a moment's notice. So that's kind of the information. Just want to let you know the information has been posted on our website. I'll also send an email out with a link to this so that you've got quick, ready access to it for those of you that may have projects that involve some foreign currency. Any questions? Okay. All right, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, regarding foreign currency, a little bit of more information from our side. If an award comes in, which the payment is in foreign currency, typically we ask permission basically from the chair, dean, and the PI in the form of a letter which tells them that this is what it is. The PI, the sponsor is not willing to change it to US currency. So do you understand that you would be responsible for fluctuations? You know, you might get less, you might get more. And we would accept the award once they sign that form and say that they know that. Having said that, also recently we became aware of that Bank of America, which is the bank of, where the regions have the bank accounts, they do not accept currencies from a list of countries. And we came across one, which we had a check that came in on an award that we had, that everything seemed to be fine at the time of accepting the award, but the check, the bank didn't accept the check. So we are working with the sponsor, and they fully are aware now. They are issuing a new check to us. So again, we have the list of those countries. So in those examples, no, we won't be able to accept the awards. So the letter, with the PI chair, dean would not help in those situations, right? Are you going to put a list of that list on the website, James, or? I think that makes sense to have it. Well, we don't have anything like that on our website talking about payments and all of that, but I thought that since you have this website, maybe that list, there's like 10 countries or something, 10 currencies, and just saying that bank, just the letter which came from the bank telling us that they don't accept these anymore. Okay, thank you. Any other questions in general from anywhere? Yes, there are some updates, federal updates and related things that Cindy is going to share with us. Cindy, our Executive Associate Vice Chancellor. Thank you, Cindy.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So good to be here. Last month, I had the privilege of going to Washington, D.C. again and working with the Council on Government Relations to speak with a lot of our federal agencies about what's going on with them, what's going on the Hill in general. And so a quick update. The issue of foreign influence continues to be one of the biggest discussion points on the Hill. You might ask, what is foreign influence? So this is our government's concern that the research going on at our universities is being converted, diverted by foreign nationals to their federal governments for economic competitiveness reasons and national security reasons. So this is very concerning to, we had a panel with CIA, security agents, and some of our federal agencies that spoke with us about the concerns that are being raised for them. One is in the area of proposals. So anyone who's served on a peer review panel knows that those panels are supposed to keep that information highly confidential. There's evidence that there have been some individuals serving on those panels who have taken some proposals and taken them and reshopped them in another country to get funding from a foreign government, and then getting a competitive edge in another country on science that they saw on a funding panel. This is, so you're going to see from the federal agencies, NIH and NSF, additional language information from them that further clarifies the confidentiality of that process and makes sure that everyone understands what happens in panel reviews stays in panel review. So that's one aspect. Another aspect are individuals, and you may have seen things in the news from MD Anderson, Los Alamos National Lab, of individuals being, well, asked to resign or resigning, who allegedly had been sending research information to foreign countries that was funded by our federal government. And what the commonality that I can see there, because people always say, well, what can I do to protect myself from that kind of a thing? Right now, the key is transparency. What I can glean from some of the public iterations of what's going on, and you don't always get everything in the news media, realize that. But what I've been able to surmise is a lot of it about being asked to resign because they were asked questions about their ties to foreign countries, and the individuals were not truthful about those ties. Things like being part of the 1,000 Talent Program, and when asked about it, saying, oh, I was never part of the 1,000 Talent Program, but the evidence shows that yes, indeed you were. So those kinds of things leads me to believe that the best path forward is transparency. And I know I've said this in other forums, NIH and NSF just came up with their new PA-PPG proposed guide. Comments on that guide are due by July 29th. So just coming up this week, get your comments in if you have concerns about their new PA-PPG. And it addresses some of these concerns. So your current and pending support forms and what they're going to be used for, you need to be transparent, including all of those external activities on your current and pending support forms. NIH already has aspects of both their proposal application and also their annual reporting that requires you to put in their foreign affiliations and foreign components related to your project. Make sure you read the definitions in their guides. Make sure you're reporting on those appropriately and adequately and transparently. If an individual does not want to report something that they're doing in a foreign country, the feds are saying, well, the institution should be really concerned if somebody's not willing to be transparent. They need to start asking questions why. But if you're not going to be reporting that to the federal government, maybe you should consider divesting yourself from those kinds of activities. So transparency is key here to keep the institution compliant and the individual free from concerns about what could happen. So if you're a department administrator and you have a faculty member that's been traveling to certain countries, and then you look at their application and there's nothing in there about any of that, maybe you should prompt them to say, hey, I noticed XYZ, is there something you need to disclose in your grant application? The other aspect this hits, and we've already talked about it, Jessica was up here talking, is the conflict of interest and conflict of commitment reporting. So if you are reporting things to COI, COC, and it's not in a grant application, there's an inconsistency there that we need to ask questions about. So make sure you're being consistent with your reporting, that it's accurate and that it is transparent and you're not leaving things off. That's the best path towards protecting you, your research team, and the institution. So
we have a question
yes,
here.
A question.
The question is whether Office of Research is going to inform the PIs of these issues. I think this is one way of we are communicating the information to the departments, and departments asking for help, departments to share the information with the PIs. But is there anything else we should be doing? So
yes, we do communicate more broadly. We have a listserv that we can use. The difficulty right now, while I'm saying is, what I'm telling you is coming fresh from Washington, D.C. And as I mentioned, some of these clarifications and things that are coming from the agencies, it's posted proposed guidance, right? But with the NSF example, the new PA-PPG with those clarifications and changes won't be effective until January 2020. So we want to provide you with information in a timely manner once it is settled what's going to happen. Because right now we're in the comments stage. We're providing them feedback. And then based on their feedback, what they have in their guide could change just between now and the end of June. So what we want to communicate to you is what their final proposed guidance looks like. And hopefully we will have that in September-ish, I'm thinking, and so that you can prepare for January. But what I'm telling you for now, based on the news articles and things that are happening in the press, is please be transparent. That's the message.
Sure.
One area we're seeing are letters from senators, like Senator Grassley has been sending out letters saying, how are you spending federal money in the genomics area, as an example? Are you utilizing, I can't remember one company, but BGI, you know, so Beijing Genome Institute is one that they're looking at, and WuXi, WXI. Anyway, there's two companies that were mentioned in that letter that we're being asked to kind of provide feedback on what we do or don't have. So again, it's not a law, it's not a regulatory requirement, it is a request from one of our senators of the United States. So those are some of the things that are happening right now. The other two areas that were discussed were reporting of sexual harassment. So if there is sexual harassment that has occurred and it's been, activities were supported by one of our federal agencies, NSF in particular has a very specific way of notifying them when these things happen. And NIH has now put out an email that we can use. They treat these allegations as confidential, and they do not end up in their normal, like Fastlane or other or e-comments. So they're using a different portal. There's only maybe one or two people at NIH or NSF that can view those things, and so they are keeping them confidential. That's what they told us, but they are requiring earlier reporting on these kinds of things. So just be aware of that. Any other questions?
Nope, there's nothing online here.
Mike had a.
The Mike committee at Coder.
Yeah, and Mike is on the costing committee at Coder.
So my committee at Coder, we met with NIFA about the change in the farm bill and some of the new TFF language, total federal funds at the 30% cap. And the change in the language that got put in there of we have to monitor every sub award and the prime award. So all the indirects on every sub and the prime could still only equal 30% TFF. So it really hinders, if all your subs get the 30%, we can't get the 30% on the first 25K, or we'd be over on the total award. So we explained that to them, and they were looking at some potential, they don't have, it's legislation, so it'd have to go through the legislative process, but at least they understood the process. And they were open to some suggestions, maybe like NSF does with joint proposals and not sub-award issues in the future. So they understood our concerns with that TFF. And how it puts more strain on the prime institution, and it pushes back against the collaboration that they were looking for. So, this is the first time we've met with that group, and they were open to at least suggestions. So they understood that was whatever got put in that farm bill was, or whoever did that in the last minute, added some downhill effects on some of the funding that they would be able to do. So that at least was addressed with them. And then there should be some changes coming out of the RBM research business model. So there's coming, they said soon, potentially some safe harbor stuff around sub-recipient monitoring to other FDP schools and not having to do the audit follow-up that's in the uniform guidance. So NIH is putting that out through the research terms conditions, I believe. And so they've got almost through all their channels to be able to announce this, but she gave us kind of an update of a couple things like that, and then FCTR could be going away too. So we have to do an extra report for PMS when we draw down NIH funds, even though we do it on a grant by grant basis now. But so hopefully there's a couple of reforms that they've been pushing through at that agency level. So hopefully there'll be a little bit of reduction on some burden down to the university. So that's, I think, about the rest of those.
Thank you for sharing that information regarding USDA and Farm Bill and all of that. That's causing a lot of problems here too, regarding how we would be able to collect indirect off of the subs and so on and so forth. We have a couple of projects that they are pending right now because we are getting subs from other entities, And this one entity, they are calculating indirect such that obviously to stay in compliance with total 30%. But on 2 different sub-awards they give us, the indirect would become different number. It's just, they are made up numbers now. One of them is like 25.4, the other one 22.3, something like that. So, I mean, we haven't been accepting those yet at this point. And I think our sister campuses are in the same position too. But across the country, lots of discussions going on that. We'll see how it would settle. I don't see any more questions online. It's 9:30. Anything from here? If there's nothing else, we can stop. And happy end of the fiscal year. We will see you next July. Thank you. Bye-bye.